We are now a few days away from the elections in Bavaria and Hessen, and we have a very interesting situation going on with the polls in both of these states. There is now a three-way race, a three-way tie effectively, for the second place position in both of the states. And I want to take a look at two polls that came out and what they show and what this means for these elections and just an overall view of the position of each of the parties. Now, in Hessen, we see clearly here the CDU at 31% is going to pretty much be the largest party by a large margin. Their candidate, Boris Rhein, will almost certainly become the governor of this state. But we see, interestingly, the AfD, right wing party, and the two center left parties, the Greens and the SPD, are all at 16%. In the polling aggregate, they're a bit different, but in this poll in particular, they're all effectively at the same exact number. And this is interesting because this has not happened before in a West German state where there is a tie between three parties for a position like this. And it won't determine too much of a difference. The parties involved in the government are pretty much certain in both states, but who runs the opposition will be up for grabs of who is the largest non-governing party. And I want to just take a look at what these results mean. Now, for the AfD at 16%, this is a good result for them. This is not the great result they initially expected. I think they were kind of polling initially at 19-20%. Those polls appear to have been somewhat outliers, and they might be expecting to have gotten more support than they are at now. Nonetheless, this is still an improvement from what they got in 2018, which is already a good result. The Greens are at 16%. This is a decrease from what they got last time, and they are not building on the momentum they had, but they are able to compete with the SPD. They are able to be a dominant left-wing party. Not necessarily dominant, but they are potentially going to replace the SPD in that regard. And now the SPD being in 16% is a lot different because the SPD at 16% is a disaster. Not only because this means they're no longer able to compete with the CDU as a major party, this means that even when they have a person behind them leading them, which is the case with Nancy Faeser, their lead candidate for governor, they are not able to be competitive with the other major party, in this case being the CDU. And if we take a look at polling for the governor, for the direct election of the governor, this of course does not happen, but if you take a look at what the Germans in the state or the people in Hessen think and what for their governor, we see the latest poll shows Faeser in fourth place, behind Rhein from the CDU, Al-Wazir from the Greens, and from Lambrou from the AfD, which shows that she's really lost support to all sides. She's lost more progressive voters to the Greens, some of the swing voters to the CDU, and some of the more working class populist voters to the AfD. This is not a good sign for her at all. Initially, she was polling at around 20%, and I thought that either her winning enough support with the Greens, she could become governor, or if she was to bring the SPD to a victory first place over the CDU, then she could also become governor. But as of now, that looks like it's not going to happen. And 16% is a disaster for the SPD. This will be felt in Berlin, at the capital, and also by the SPD overall in Germany. This is a horrible result for them because it shows they are becoming less and less of a major party, a people's party, and becoming almost irrelevant. They are pretty much out of the question here. And as you can see, the current government is of the CDU and Greens is polling above a majority. They are most likely going to be reelected and put in power again for another 5 years. If we look at the left-wing parties, or the CDU, or rather the SPD and the Greens, even if you put them together with the FDP, they are barely at 42%, which means that the SPD and Greens would have to outperform their results by 4 points each in order to become close to a working majority. And that isn't going to happen unless we see some huge polling miss that hasn't been seen before in Germany. And this is a defeat for the center left. This is a defeat for both the parties. And the CDU is growing off of the anger at the public, or from the public at the German federal government. So is the AfD, but being a West German state, the CDU is going to be the main profiteer of that reaction. And there's also a lot of anger towards the current governing parties. We see the FDP at 5%. It is not for sure that they are going to win representation in the state. In Bavaria, it's pretty likely that they're going to lose. They're going to fall under 5%. Here, of course, they need, just like Bavaria, they need 5% to win representation in the state legislature. If they fall below, they will not have any seats. Same for the Free Voters, who didn't win representation last time. They are growing, but the FDP is involved in federal German politics. They are a major party, not a major party, but they are one of the 6 active parties at the federal level in Germany and throughout all the states. And if they lose representation in Hessen as well as Bavaria, it could be a signal to the party, it could be a sign, and maybe pressure them to potentially leave the federal government. But we will see what happens on Sunday. The left party could hold representation theoretically, but with these parties are at 5%, 1 point or even a tenth of a point is going to make all the difference. And overall, the main focus of this election is who's going to become second place. The AfD could win second, the Greens, or the SPD. It won't change much other than kind of a signal to the election or to the parties on the federal level. It will be kind of a signal, and the parties are going to want to win second place just because of what it symbolizes, and of course whoever is the largest non-governing party, which will likely be either the AfD or the SPD, will hold the opposition leader position in this state. Now I want to take a look at Bavaria, and we see a pretty much similar situation between the Free Voters, the Greens, and the AfD. And like I said, in Hessen, we have a situation where the government is almost pretty much, predetermined. The CSU and Free Voters have expressed interest in reforming that current coalition. The CSU has said it's not going to work with either the Greens or the AfD, which means there's effectively only one possible coalition. They're polling well above a majority, so that's pretty much what it's going to be. I did another video talking about who the opposition leader in Bavaria will be, whether it be from Katharina Scholz from the Greens or Katharina Ebner-Steiner from the AfD. As you can see, the Greens are ahead by a point, but that is still, up for grabs, that position. And overall, these results are a mixed, the Free Voters, this is a great result for them. Their leader, Hubert Aiwanger, had a scandal involving a leaflet, and initially it was kind of seen that would hurt him, but it appears to have actually helped the party in the polls, and he at 15% with his party. That is an increase from the previous result and putting him potentially at second place. They are going to be extremely happy with that result. The Greens, although they're suffering some losses at 2.6, they are still ahead of the SPD. They are still the main left-wing party in the state. They will be seen as the main non-right-wing, the main progressive opposition party. They're still going to have a huge presence in Bavarian state politics. They might be disappointed that they're not growing, that they're not holding what they got, but overall, this is not a total disaster for them like it is for the SPD, which is not able to get 10% in a major state like this as what used to be one of Germany's main parties. The AfD at 14%, this is a result that is maybe somewhat disappointing from them initially looking at it, but Bavaria is a state that votes very differently on the state level than it does federally, and so a lot of these voters are probably people that would vote for the AfD that are voting for the Free Voters or for the CSU because they're more right-wing in the state in particular. So 14% is not necessarily the big gains they're seeing on the federal level, but nonetheless, it is an increase of 3.8, and that already is on top of a result in 2018 that was pretty decent for a first-time party in a West German state like this. And overall, they might be disappointed that they're not at 16 or 18%. This is for them a good result and a signal that they are growing from what they were in 2018 and also, of course, with that 2021. And so what's going to happen in this election on Sunday is going to be very interesting because we know who's going to be in charge. We know that Magazoda will be the governor of Bavaria, Boris Rhein will become the governor of Hessen, and who will be in government with them. But who will be the opposition leaders of these states is up for grabs. And also the positions of the parties, they don't matter in terms of, power, because even if they get, 15% and 15.5, 16%, they're going to be within a few seats of each other. There's not going to be much difference, but it is symbolic. It is symbolic. If the SPD does come fourth place, it is a defeat for them. If the AfD becomes the second largest party in a West German state for them, that is a milestone for the party. A lot of it is symbolism. A lot of it is just winning positions. And doesn't matter too much other than the boost it gives to the morale of these parties in the other states and on the federal level. But this is the video I wanted to do. I wanted to give you guys just a brief update of this situation, since I thought it was interesting how you have this race in both states, this phenomenon happening at the same time. And we will do some more videos on Sunday or afterwards once we have all the results in from the elections. It will be a big day in Germany and in German politics, and a lot will change, a lot will happen, and I'll make a breakdown of the results and what it means for German politics and for the parties themselves. But for now, this is just an update, and this will be the last video until these elections. And if you guys liked it, please share and subscribe, and I will see you all in the next one. Thank you for watching.